Hello, this is Manraj Grewal. You're watching Prime Asia TV. And as we've seen with the US's capture of President Maduro and his wife, some people have been out in the streets celebrating, while others are worried about the future of Venezuela. Well, currently we're standing in front of US consulate in Vancouver, and this group believes that the capture of President Maduro and his wife was unethical and that they should get to decide what happens with their country. Let's go ask what their opinions are.
80 people and abducted. Boom! Shame! And resulted in the abduction of Venezuela's rightful, democratically elected President Nicolas Maduro.
What do you have to say about USA capturing a sitting president of Venezuela?
This is a blatant violation of international law and the sovereignty of nations. We are outraged that this has happened again with impunity. The United States so far has gotten away with yet another war crime, the abducting of a democratically elected president of another country. And we expect the government of Prime Minister Carney to take a strong stand against this violation of international law, together with people around the world that are rising up in support of Venezuela.
Carney sent out a message. Do you think that message was strong enough? Was it the correct next step? What do you think he needs to say more of? What does Canada need to say more of?
Absolutely am outraged at the sentiment of Mark Carney. In his statement, he felt that he had to reiterate that Canada does not recognize the democratically elected government of Venezuela. He mentioned that the government of Canada stands with the so-called people of Venezuela without recognizing that people in Venezuela are firm against U.S. invasion and U.S. interfering in their internal affairs. This includes people that are both supportive and against the government. Mark Carney recognized that Canada does not have normalized relations with the government of Venezuela, and also that Canada has imposed sanctions on Venezuela. As peace-loving people in Canada, we stand against both of those. Canada must have normalized relations with Venezuela and must lift all of its sanctions which harm people in Venezuela.
What is your opinion on what's going on with Venezuela and USA capturing a sitting president?
Well, I am not Venezuelan. I'm not the most familiar with Venezuelan politics. So I think that the people of Venezuela should be the ones to decide their leaders. And if they are not able to do so democratically, that is a problem. Let's not say otherwise. However, to use that as a justification for invading another country, kidnapping their leader, and then indicting them on the domestic soil of the attacker means that international law is fully and completely dead if countries don't stand up and refuse to abide by this. I don't want to dismiss legitimate concern about Maduro himself, if that's a lived experience that they have been through. But if we stand by and allow America to do this to Venezuela and to their president, then literally any leader is going to have to fear the same thing happening to them from a U.S. indictment.
So you think this is setting up a dangerous precedent? Like, have you seen Carney's message? And what do you think, Canada should be responding? What do you think Canada's next steps should be?
I think that this could be the start of the end of solving conflict for 300 years through diplomacy. Not exclusively, of course, but how can we trust any diplomatic efforts to avoid war, to accomplish a compromise, which again, compromise means nobody quite gets fully what they want. It's uncomfortable, it's messy, that's what humanity is. But this refusal to abide by this is what makes those peaceful, messy compromises possible. And if Carney yesterday, he simultaneously in a single tweet or post legitimized and excused the reasoning for the attack while simultaneously calling for everybody to respect international law. Those two things are fundamentally incompatible with one another. He needs to pick a side and be honest about it instead of lying in a chalk line of himself on the floor. It is I sympathize with the feeling. That is a very scary thing to stand up to a tyrant, but it is absolutely necessary for us to maintain diplomacy around the globe.
It is total illegally to capture or to kidnap, as it was, the head state of a sovereign nation. The people are the ones that elected or have the responsibility to change their the politicians, their leaders. This is not the responsibility of a foreign nation to do that. Yeah. Because of the drugs. If you see the amount of drugs that was stated by the DIA, that the drugs that were coming from the east side were like 7% of the drugs that were coming from the border. The rest was coming from the border, Mexican border, from the Canadian border. So it was never about the drugs. Yeah, the democracy of Venezuela is about basically the domination of Venezuelan markets, the Venezuelan oil and power. Yes.
The largest purchaser of Canadian oil is America. And President Trump understands that. They know that we're beholden to them in order to sell our oil. And it's not a coincidence that the one country that they're trying to take over right now has the largest reserve of oil. For a long time, President Trump has been saying things about calling Canada the 51st state. We should take that very seriously. Right? He's been commenting about taking over Greenland, commenting about attacking Mexico, and these are things that are only a joke until they actually happen, right? And because Canada has such a oil-based economy, and our largest purchaser is our neighbor, we're backed into a corner basically by saying, Trump's saying to us too, look, I can go in and I can kidnap a president, and if you don't give me your oil at a reasonable price.
U.S. hands off Venezuela!
U.S. hands off Venezuela!
U.S. hands off Venezuela!
No more on Venezuela!
And you're one of the organizers here. In the past few days, there's been a mixed reaction. Some people are very supportive of it. Some people are worried about what Venezuela's future is going to be. What do you have to say about all this?
I think people should be worried, and I think really the whole world should be very concerned, very worried, and outraged, and should stand up to condemn this totally illegal move, this violation of international law that the U.S. government has done by abducting, first of all, launching military attacks against a sovereign nation, against Venezuela, another nation within the United Nations, and then abducting that nation's president, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife. This is a violation of international law and dangerous for the whole world.
Yeah.
And we are demanding that the government of Canada, that Carney, condemn this attack, condemn the abduction of Nicolas Maduro and his wife, demand the release and demand that Nicolas Maduro and his wife be returned to Venezuela, and that Canada stop their support for U.S. intervention in Venezuela.
There's going to be emotional toll taken on the Venezuelans that are living here and the Venezuelans that are living in Venezuela. More than that, there's also going to be economic loss of Canada now, with Venezuela having the biggest oil reserves in the world. How do you think Canada's economy is going to be impacted if USA gets a hold of Venezuela and starts controlling that country?
I hope that eventuality will not come. I will say that people in Venezuela are mobilizing to continue defending their country. But it is true that Venezuela has the world's largest oil reserves and a type of oil that is very similar to the oil here in Canada. So I think it is a big mistake of Carney to side with the United States in this intervention in a foreign country, in really violating the sovereignty of an independent nation, but for many reasons, including what you've mentioned here.
Some people are celebrating that this is a good step that has been taken by USA. What do you have to say to that?
There are Venezuelans that are supporting what is happening. They are people that represent a different side, an opposition to the government, oftentimes a violent opposition that has tried to violently overthrow the government as well. But there are opposition in Venezuela that are standing against U.S. intervention today, that are marching in the streets. So I think it is a minority, and that's the key. A government with elected by a democratic process wins because it has a majority. That doesn't mean it has everybody, but it represents the majority. And I believe, from my experiences of being in Venezuela, from all of my research, my conversations with people in Venezuela, that the government of President Maduro, who's been illegally kidnapped by the United States, is what has the majority of support of the people in Venezuela.
Well, as you've seen, they're holding up slogans such as Hands Off Venezuela. And many of the people's opinions is that the sovereign state of Venezuela should get to decide what happens with its own government, and that the interference of USA sets up a dangerous precedent for the future. Well, that was our program tour today. Keep watching Prime Asia TV.